Hello, my name is Melissa Strathman, and this is my video presentation for our case study on internet use violations. Starting off with what our problem is, we have Dr. Forbes, who is the principal at Roosevelt High School, who has an inexperienced science teacher in the classroom who has caused some frustration and angst for students and families. Parents have complained to the principal regarding this teacher's ability and what they believe to be unfair classroom expectations. Dr. Forbes has provided administrative support to Ms. Walker, the new teacher, to try to help improve her instructional strategies, offer some advice, guidance. However, it's stated in our case study she has not implemented the suggestions that were provided to her. We also know that Ms. Walker has received an email from an unknown source directing her to a malicious website where there are a number of inappropriate personal and professional attacks made on her on that website. She truly believes someone wishes to harm her based on the comments that are posted on this website. When she shares this information with her administrator, he understands why she is upset but dismisses it as a prank, and he indicates that he will begin to address the issue, including an investigation in the morning. There are a number of things that we just do not know in this case scenario, and a lot of questions that I had as I was just thinking through and processing the situation. I think the first one that in my opinion is the most urgent and important is whether this is simply a prank or a viable threat to Ms. Walker's safety. We don't know when the website was created and by whom. The case study also references one student in particular that Ms. Walker knows she has had recent issues with. However, based on the complaints that the principal has received, there could be many students that could possibly be behind the creation of the website. We don't know whether the school can determine by IP address or information they're able to gather, whether they're going to know who created the website or sent that email to her. And we also don't know if at what point law enforcement becomes involved in this situation. What we also don't know is whether any of the complaints by students and parents are justified based on the administrator's observations of her teaching skills in the classroom. We know he's addressed those with her, but we don't know if he believes that she is an ineffective teacher. We also don't know how much support administratively Dr. Forbes has provided to her. I don't know if it was just because of the parent complaints or if he regularly noticed areas she needed to improve on, maybe during classroom walkthroughs or regular teacher observations. So we just don't know what he believes to be true about her teaching abilities in this situation. And we don't know how he's addressed those issues other than he provided strategies at one point to her. We also don't know why she's not taking his suggestions for improving classroom management or her teaching skills and abilities. Since she is in her second year, we do not know what the mentoring plan at Roosevelt High School has been. So did she have an assigned mentor teacher? We don't know if she had a mentor teacher, how that individual has tried to support her. We also don't know what suggestions Dr. Forbes, the principal, has provided to Ms. Walker to try to improve the climate within her classroom and her relationships with students and parents. And we also do not know how Dr. Forbes has handled parent and student complaints of staff in the past, especially with Ms. Walker. So there's just a lot of information when you sit and process this case study. From an administrative perspective, you just don't know a lot of critical information necessary to really formulate a strong targeted plan. I really think there's two pressing issues in this case scenario that we're presented with. I think first and foremost, the malicious website that's been created that is directly targeting a teacher, both personally and professionally, is a major issue in this case study. I also think the frustrations that students and parents believe exist with Ms. Walker's teaching And whether she is an effective teacher or not is the second large issue in this case scenario. When I started to think about plans of actions, I think, in my opinion, step one is the website. I think that poses an immediate and critical need for that to be addressed by administration. I think they need to determine who created the website and posted those threatening comments about Ms. Walker. If I were building principal, I would interview students in her class. I would gather as much information as I could from students to try to narrow the window of individuals that may have been targeting her. I would also utilize our IT department to try to determine if we can figure out who sent the email to Ms. Walker and then possibly who created the website. And I think what can't be avoided in this situation is law enforcement may need to become involved. And so I think depending on what information is found upon the school's investigation, because this was a threat posted on the internet, you just have to take that seriously in this day and age. So I think law enforcement involvement could probably be necessary in this situation as well. I think the second step in a plan of action is to really look closely at Ms. Walker's teaching skills and abilities, as well as her classroom management plan. If I were the building administrator, I would begin regular walkthroughs and just increase the time of dropping into the classroom to really assess what's going on instructionally. And I would also have a formal observation plan for her to really be able to spend some targeted time in the classroom to see what she is proposing for students, how she manages her class, and what instructional techniques she's using. And then based on those observations and walkthroughs, I would have a targeted plan of assistance for her to try to improve areas of deficit. She's an inexperienced teacher, and without targeted support, may not grow in the direction we would like her to do that. And I also think looking at that mentor support, a teacher mentor, and finding ways to increase that support, just having another veteran colleague to be able to provide some guidance could be very powerful. I think a team approach between administration and that mentor teacher would be very helpful in this situation. Looking at step 3, moving forward, there could be some possible disciplinary action for students regarding the website, depending what that investigation yields, depending on what that school policy is for any of that behavior. We don't know that piece of information as far as discipline policy. There also could be possible disciplinary action for Ms. Walker as the teacher if she does not respond to those targeted supports to improve her instruction and classroom management. And then I also think an important step moving forward is really to have some focused conversations with students and staff regarding online behavior, especially safety, ramifications for malicious postings, whether that's consequences within the school or outside with law enforcement. I think some education and training in that area would also be an important step moving forward. I think there's some different ways this scenario could play out based on the information that's discovered through that investigation. The first could be that the school investigates and finds a student or a group of students guilty of creating that website and posting those malicious comments about the teacher. I think that would be in direct violation of student code of conduct for that school, and there would be disciplinary actions that would be imposed based on the behavior that was seen. There's also possible legal ramifications depending upon age of student, depending upon how viable that threat may be to Ms. Walker's safety. And again, I think that's where you get law enforcement involved. If that's looking in your investigation with students, it is not feeling good with the comments kids are making about her, I would definitely get law enforcement involved in any situation like that. In my opinion, it's better safe than sorry. And if law enforcement does not feel it's a viable threat, then the school would just proceed with discipline on their end. I think another resolution that could happen in this scenario is the school is not able to figure out which students were involved in posting the malicious comments or sending the email to her. I think if the school just filters this as a student prank and doesn't take it seriously as a threat, there won't be consequences given to students for that behavior. And I think that is a slippery slope. I think that could create a culture when students feel that any behavior is tolerated, that there are not consequences for action. And I think when you look at what school's job is, it's not only education for students in an academic realm, but in a civic and community realm as well. And students need to see a connection to their actions outside of the school setting. So I think that's a possible factor in that resolution. I also think another possible outcome in this situation is that her teaching skills do or do not improve, and the issue and complaints continue. And so I think you're looking again at that formalized plan of improvement and how she responds to those, that guidance from administrators. I think that could affect future employment. I also think what's important in this scenario is that you're in this high school's in a very affluent and area, and I think influential parents, often with financial means, can make certain situations difficult for administration to deal with. And so I would also be looking at how to consider a plan to just improve those relationships between Ms. Walker and the parents of the students that she serves. My own personal reflection as I thought through this case and how I would approach that if that happened in our district, I think first and foremost, the teacher in this situation believes she's threatened and feels uncomfortable based on the messages she has received on that website. And I think those feelings have got to be validated and not dismissed by the administrator. I think Ms. Walker needs to see her administrator supporting her through this situation. And I think it's a very dangerous position to assume that the posts are simply a prank. And again, I mentioned earlier, including law enforcement if necessary. And I think in this day and age, we just have to be very careful about our assumptions. And I do believe a strong stance needs to be taken by building administration. And one, I think, again, I mentioned it earlier, I think when those issues rise to that level are not addressed by school administration, then you run the risk of creating a culture where anything is tolerated and allowed for student behavior. And I think that my thinking around this comes from the standard of that we need to be educational leaders who are acting ethically in situations to promote student and really in staff well-being and success. I was also wondering in this situation, does the principal value the prestigious reputation above anything else? So will he take a hard stance if necessary, knowing again the population of students, families are very affluent, the school has a very positive reputation. The scenario stated he takes a lot of pride in that, as he should. But I just wondered, will he address those hard issues in difficult situations given all of those dynamics? I also wondered if he's been negligent in addressing issues with this teacher. The scenario talked about how he takes a lot of pride in only having the most highly qualified teachers in his building, and so if he made a mistake possibly and erred in hiring this teacher, does he not want that to come to light for his own personal reputation? Another point I was thinking about is just how important it is to invest in new teaching staff. I think we need to have targeted plans to support new teachers. Even our, strong young teachers still have a lot to learn and to grow professionally and need that guidance. I think fair treatment and approach in all situations, whether it's a student or staff issue, has got to be modeled by administration. And I also think providing continued opportunities just to build relationships among students and staff and within the school community is absolutely critical to foster a positive school climate. And I think that speaks to standard 5D when we are thinking about those issues. I think there's many unresolved issues in our scenario that we just don't know what the school and community response will be, depending upon whether law enforcement is involved. We don't know how teacher will respond or parents in this situation. And so I think there's a lot of question marks in this scenario and a lot of different ways it could play out. Here are my standards, and I thank you very much for the time